Johnny Carson pushed comedy boundaries that most networks wouldn't touch, but some jokes went so far they created genuine controversy and sparked public outrage when they resurfaced decades later. These are the jokes that went too far on Johnny Carson. George Carlin, 7 words you cannot say.
But there are some words that you can go to jail for. There are some words that we just have decided we will not say all the time. But some of them are all right some of the time. This is all right on television. You can say on television things like, well, you've made a perfect ass of yourself tonight. But you can't say, hey, let's go get some.
Carlin's Carson set leans into his famous 7 words, you cannot say incident that Carlin actually got arrested for.
Now, George, you must promise me something. You won't get me in any trouble on the show tonight, because I've been reading about your problems in Milwaukee, and they busted you there, or tried to bust you, or there's a court case pending.
Right.
Because, and I don't want to jeopardize the case, so I have to be careful the words I use, I guess.
Right.
You allegedly,
yes,
let me put it that way, used some words in your act which brought about a bust, saying that you were, what was the technical language in the...
Oh, it was disorderly conduct - profanity, as opposed, I guess, to disorderly conduct drunk, disorderly conduct something else.
Carlin passed away in 2008, but if he were alive today, his jokes definitely would have gotten him canceled.
Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish. But he loves you.
Johnny admired his daringness to question many different topics. He said numerous times publicly he changed the format of stand-up forever. Richard Pryor, the police jab. Back in the 70s, Pryor's most controversial stand-up jokes on The Tonight Show poked at police and discrimination.
Then the police came, I went in the house. Because they got magnums too. Yeah, 2 grab your legs, 1 grab your head, it'll snap. Oh, he broke. Can you break it? Is it okay? Let's check the menu. Yep, page 8, you can bring it right there. See? Let's drag him downtown. Okay. And they got them dogs that sick on your ass, right? Them German shepherds and them some bad mother. They fast too. They catch the average white boy.
The audience loved it then, but a joke like this repeated today would definitely spark outrage, or even get Richard canceled. Carson told friends, Pryor's the only comic who can make the audience uncomfortable and grateful at the same time. Joan Rivers, the library card joke. Rivers came out firing with a crude line about a man reaching up a woman's skirt looking for a library card.
Look is there.
But don't you think men really like intelligence more when it comes right down to it?
Ah, please. Are we going to go back to that? Are you kidding?
Sure. I mean, a brain, a caring
person. No man has ever put his hand up a woman's dress looking for a library card.
Johnny laughed, but gave her that tight grin that said, we're still on TV, keep it moving, while the audience erupted. The Jane Fonda joke.
Said, she was on Johnny Carson's show one time. She came there with a cat on her lap, and she said to you, do you want to pet my...
It was a normal chat. Then, out of nowhere, Jane drops the Zaza Gabor rumor on Carson like she's daring him to answer it on national TV. The question forces Johnny into that tightrope zone between denial and network-appropriate restraint while the audience erupts. Carson later told friends, Fonda caught me completely off guard. That was one of the few times a guest genuinely put me on the spot. Rodney Dangerfield's marriage line. Rodney's too-far bits on Carson usually come from machine gun jokes about his wife and humiliation that keeps stacking before anyone can breathe.
My wife signed me up for a bridge club. I jump off next Tuesday.
A specific example that pops up in circulated clips is the surprise me line that turns into a vicious wife joke about being shown a naked picture of his own wife.
I tell you, I can't relax, The other night I was in a place I felt like having a few drinks. Someone ordered a bartender. I said, surprise me. He showed me a picture of my wife.
The audience explodes because it's blunt and fast, but it's also the kind of punch that reads harsher through a modern lens. Today, that style gets tagged as boomer misogyny, even though it's just comedy. Carson often laughs hard, but you can feel the studio bracing for what the next line will step on. Rodney's pace is so relentless, there's no time to process whether a joke went too far before 3 more land.
Well, I finally solved my drinking problem. I joined Alcoholics Anonymous, Yeah, I still drink. I use a different name, that's all.
Don Rickles, the box destroyer.
Ha! Carson's cigarette box. Oh, I broke his box. I broke Carson's cigarette box.
Rickles takes over the couch by treating Carson like the punchline, not the host, and the insults keep escalating instead of cooling off. The cigarette box incident crosses the line when Rickles breaks Johnny's prized personal item during a guest hosting appearance, and the fallout becomes a running on-air storyline. Carson later showed up on Rickles' CPO Sharkey set with cameras to get revenge, saying, "You broke my box on the show last night." Sam Kinison, The Elvis Meltdown.
Are you sorry we drifted apart?
Kinison doesn't just tell a joke, he detonates a whole segment with chaotic ranting energy. He sings "Are You Lonesome Tonight" in an Elvis-style performance that turns into volume and rage until it stops resembling a routine and starts feeling like a public breakdown. Carson's job became containment, not hosting, as he told his producer, "Kinison's brilliant, but I spent the whole time making sure we didn't go off the air." Red Fox, The Nightclub Contraband.
What is the stuff? It looks like material.
It's chemical stuff, and I can't tell you about it because
It's a secret?
it's illegal. That's illegal.
No, not illegal.
Fox's whole reputation was built on material too dirty for mainstream TV, so anytime that vibe leaked onto Carson, it felt like a boundary test. One joke that some consider crossing the line is when he'd deliver with crude implication with that, "I know I shouldn't say this here" rhythm. The crowd laughs because it feels like forbidden contraband being smuggled into a clean studio. In today's climate, a chunk of that material gets labeled instantly as gross out or punching down, even if it's aimed at nobody in particular. The tension is always whether the punchline forces a censor-friendly dodge or a quick subject change. Carson's reactions tend to be amused, but ready to steer away if it gets too explicit. Fox knew exactly how far he could push before network standards would intervene. Milton Berle, The Relentless Innuendo.
Gotta get something. I missed the last 3 jokes in your monologue.
Oh, that was the one about the...
Burley's too far. Moments are usually the relentless string of bawdy wink-wink jokes built around women's bodies and cheating and naughty implication. The specific problem is less one punchline and more the cumulative effect he keeps dragging the conversation back to dirty innuendo until it stops feeling clever and starts feeling like a guy who won't drop it. Audiences in the room laugh because it's a known Burle mode, but modern audiences often hear it as dated and predatory. That's exactly the cancellation risk today. Not that it's edgy, but that it sounds like normalized creep behavior. Carson typically lets him run, but you can sense the need to keep it from getting truly explicit. Burle came from an era where this kind of innuendo was considered harmless fun, but the persistence makes it feel uncomfortable now. He'd make a joke about a woman's figure, then follow up with another, then another, until the segment became entirely about sensual suggestion. Johnny would try to redirect to actual interview topics, but Burle would loop right back to the dirty material. The audience laughed because Burle was a legend and that was his style, but watching clips today, the discomfort is obvious. Modern viewers see the pattern as harassment, disguised as comedy rather than harmless teasing. Burle never seemed to read the room or care if he'd pushed too far, he just kept going. Carson's tolerance showed respect for a comedy elder, but also created moments that haven't aged well. The generational gap is stark. Burle thought he was being playful, while modern standards see it as somewhat creepy. His appearances became case studies in how comedy evolves, and what was acceptable then isn't now. Johnny maintained professionalism, but clips show him working to contain Burle's energy. The challenge was honoring a comedy legend while preventing the show from becoming uncomfortable. Burle's vaudeville background meant he viewed ribald humor as essential showmanship, not boundary violation. He'd treat female audience members as props for his jokes, gesturing at them while making suggestive comments. Carson would physically turn away from these moments, trying to move the segment forward without directly confronting Burle. The network received occasional complaint letters, but Burle's status as Mr. Television gave him protection younger comics wouldn't have had. His contemporaries like Bob Hope and Jack Benny could deliver similar material, but knew when to stop. Burle never developed that filter. The contrast became more obvious when younger comics like Jerry Seinfeld appeared with cleaner, more observational humor. Burle's style suddenly looked like a relic from a less enlightened era. Carson privately told friends that booking Burle required accepting a certain amount of cringe. The trade-off was having a comedy legend on the show, even if some moments made everyone uncomfortable. Burle's later appearances showed no evolution. He performed the same material with the same approach decades apart. Jackie Mason, The Aggressive Interrogator.
I'm surprised you even have time to come here tonight.
I'll tell you the truth, I didn't want to come here.
Yeah.
Mason's strongest Carson bits are when he stops being interviewed and starts interrogating Johnny's personal life about marriage and habits and ego like he's doing a courtroom cross-exam. In circulated clips, he needles Carson about not being married and keeps escalating the premise instead of letting it pass. The crowd laughs because the disrespect feels daring on Carson's turf, but it also creates that split second as Johnny annoyed for real tension. Today, this style gets framed as hostile comedy or bullying depending on how the host reacts. The reason it reads as too far is that it flirts with breaking the show's power hierarchy live. Mason doesn't treat Johnny like the host. He treats him like another target for material. Carson's calm is what keeps it from turning into a real blow-up, but his body language sometimes shows genuine irritation. Mason pushes personal questions that cross professional boundaries, asking about Johnny's divorces and relationships. The audience enjoys the boldness, but there's always that edge of wondering if this is still fun or if it's become mean. Johnny tries to deflect with jokes, but Mason won't let him off the hook. The segment becomes a power struggle disguised as comedy. Mason's aggressive style worked in his stand-up, but on Carson's couch, it felt like an invasion. Carson later told friends that Mason could be exhausting because he wouldn't respect the host-guest dynamic. The too far element is the refusal to back down, even when Johnny signals he wants to move on. Mason interprets Carson's politeness as permission to keep pushing. Modern audiences watching clips debate whether it's fearless comedy or just rude behavior. The line between edgy and disrespectful gets tested repeatedly. Johnny maintains control, but you can see him calculating whether to shut Mason down or let it play out. Mason's appearances became less frequent over time, possibly because producers noticed the tension they created. The famous middle finger incident where Mason appeared to flip off Carson on camera became a career-defining controversy. Carson banned Mason for years after that appearance, though Mason claimed it was a misunderstanding. The ban itself became more famous than most of Mason's actual material. When they eventually reconciled, the reunion was awkward, with both men clearly remembering past friction. Mason's interrogation style worked because he genuinely didn't seem to care about consequences. Other comics would test boundaries, then retreat, but Mason just kept advancing. His Borscht Belt training taught him that aggression could be funny, but he never learned the restraint required for television. The segments show a fundamental clash between old-school confrontational comedy and Carson's more controlled format. Andrew Dice Clay, the nursery rhyme nightmare. Andrew Dice Clay's Tonight Show appearances were too far because he brought his crude nursery rhyme parodies and sometimes considered offensive material onto network television. His entire act was built on shocking audiences with graphic content and degrading jokes about women delivered with unapologetic aggression. The specific too far element was his refusal to tone down the club material for the Tonight Show audience. Carson gave him a platform, but you could sense the host's discomfort with how hard Clay pushed the boundaries. The audience reaction was split between those who found it hilarious and those who were genuinely offended. Clay's leather jacket tough guy persona made every crude joke feel more threatening than playful. He'd take innocent childhood rhymes and twist them into explicit romantic scenarios. Johnny maintained professional distance, clearly not endorsing the material, but allowing Clay to perform. The network received complaints after his appearances from viewers who felt the content was inappropriate for late night. Clay's comedy would be considered blatantly offensive by today's standards. His act relied on shock value rather than clever wordplay or social commentary. Carson later admitted he had mixed feelings about booking Clay, knowing it would generate controversy. The segments became cultural flashpoints in debates about free speech versus decency in entertainment. Clay represented a style of comedy that punched down at women rather than challenging power structures. Modern viewers watching clips are often shocked this aired on network television. The too far aspect wasn't subtle innuendo. It was explicit, crude content delivered without apology. Carson's booking of Clay showed his willingness to feature controversial acts, but also raised questions about responsibility. The audience's enthusiastic response to Clay's material reflected cultural attitudes that seem dated and offensive now. Clay never adjusted his tone for the setting. He performed his club act exactly as written. Johnny tried to maintain some distance through his reactions, neither fully endorsing nor condemning the material. The appearances became defining moments in how comedy boundaries were tested on mainstream television. Clay's success on Carson helped launch his career, but also cemented his reputation as intentionally offensive. The segments remain controversial examples of how far late-night comedy could go in that era. NBC Standards and Practices reportedly had lengthy discussions about whether Clay's material crossed the line. The network's decision to air the segments unedited signaled changing attitudes toward explicit content. Clay's appearances on other shows like MTV created additional controversy as his act reached younger audiences. Female comics and feminist groups criticized Carson for giving Clay a prestigious platform. The defense was always free speech, but critics argued that amplifying this kind of behavior wasn't neutral. Clay sold out Madison Square Garden partly on the strength of his Carson appearances, proving controversy could be profitable. His rapid rise and fall showed how shock comedy has a limited shelf life. By the early 1990s, his act felt stale because he never evolved beyond the offensive nursery rhymes. Carson's Carson's willingness to book him reflected his hands-off approach to comedy. He let comics sink or swim on their own merit. The jokes on this list were considered comical innovation back when they were said. Now many people would consider these offensive and would never make it on normal talk shows today. Do you think any of these jokes crossed the line? Or some people now are just too soft? Subscribe to the channel if you're new and click the like button down below for more content just like this.